So, hey everyone, my name is Ryan Leffel. As Joe just mentioned, I'm the head of design at Priceline. I'm also the brand ambassador in New York City for UXDX. So really excited about today. I think we have 2 days of really great content lined up and super excited to talk to Mamuna today. I think this is going to be a really good one. And
I hope so.
taking a look at your LinkedIn, you have a just really impressive background. Maybe we could just start with telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are.
Sure thing. So currently VP of Product at Shopify. I've worked across a number of smaller and larger companies, from Bloomberg, Sony's, to small startups in LA and here in New York. I've led engineering teams, product managers, product design, data research, you name it. It's been fun. So I'm here today with you, Ryan.
Awesome. Great. So why don't we start with today? Let's talk a little bit about the team that you have today. And what size team are you working with?
Yeah, so recently went through a different change of team. So I went from a 700 person team now down to about 100, just a different shift in the organization. So about 100 people, 150 or so.
Wow, it's a big team. And could you talk a little bit about the composition of that team?
Yeah. So it's a cross-functional mix of engineers, designers, product managers, and delivery managers or project managers.
Great. And so just before we move on, just show of hands here. How many of you are in person?
Or remote. At work.
At work.
At work.
Good point.
How many of you are here right now with us?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I did piece that together. I knew you were all here. How about hybrid? At work, not here.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And how many are fully remote? At work, not here. I know you're all here.
Okay.
Show of hands. Great. So, and what are you doing today?
So Shopify is fully remote. We have the concept of bursts. So in the event your team wants to get together to discuss a problem or work through something together, there are in-person locations where your team comes together and huddles.
So in terms of building culture on your team, you have a large team, so I think a few pieces of this. One, how do you approach just building a good, strong, positive culture with a large team, and how do you do that being remote comparatively to when you were in the office?
Yeah, so it took a lot of trial and error for me. Today, I focus a lot on just one-on-one relationships, interpersonal relationships, understanding the needs of the team, keeping in mind that cross-functionally there just are different needs, there are different touch points, everyone's just not the same. And so when I think about the needs of my design team touch points during the week versus potentially my delivery managers or PMs or even engineers, it varies completely. The types of problems they want to come together to solve or discuss are very different. And so I'm very cognizant of that need, and I make sure that I carve out sufficient time. The thing I've found, especially when you're building teams remotely, is that everyone wants to feel seen, and they want to feel that they are attached to anything that's impactful. So they want to feel like not only are they telling you something, but they're getting something back in return. So a lot of my time is spent not just having them come together and tell me things, but me also coming to the table with information to share with them so they feel like they are part and plugged into the bigger organization. And so a lot of it comes down to team touch points, smaller group touch points, one-on-one touch points, but in each of these different groups, making sure that there's a different meaning or purpose behind each one.
Great. And have you had any, being a larger team and now even a remote team, have there been breakdowns in communication or even how you want to scale the team? And could you give an example?
Certainly have been breakdowns. I think especially for me, the biggest one was in the transition during COVID, which I'm sure a lot of folks here experienced, but transitioning from in-person to remote and how to do that meaningfully. I think in that world, we were all kind of thrown in and trying to figure out, okay, what does this mean? What is the shape of this thing? The teams are kind of freaking out, okay, how do I connect? How do I meet with people on Zoom all day? And I think we all had a bit of fatigue after some time. And so at the same time, a lot of companies were saying, like, what is this COVID thing? How are we going to shift strategies? How do we plan for the unknown? And so there was a lot of just change. And for myself, the breakdown was I was adjusting to remote. I was also adjusting to the new strategy. And I had forgotten that the team was steps behind in where I was because they weren't as plugged in to the changes. And so, in a lot of instances where I had already digested the change, the team needed time and space to understand and digest information for themselves. And so today, what I generally do is I will make sure that I'm scaling information as I'm getting it. So if I learn something, I make sure my managers know, and I make sure they have time to ask questions, they have time to digest, and then they can scale it downwards to the next group. So it's not just on me to share information, but now it's myself, my managers, and whatever leadership group or team I have beside me. And so we all feel accountable for making sure that the teams are caught up to speed. And I think in the beginning, it was more so I felt on me to do that, and that was my point of failure.
Right. No, it's interesting. With such a large team, so you're mainly communicating through managers or down to
Sometimes. So, I mean, I still will communicate directly to a team and all hands in several meetings, but I realistically know I'm not going to get time with each person one-on-one to meaningfully ask questions as I would want to. And so it's being mindful of the fact that information may travel faster than me, so and that's okay.
Right, right. And in terms of now you have a cross-functional team, so you're managing a lot of different disciplines. In the
Right.
past, I think you've managed designers.
Yep.
For me, my background is it's design teams and research teams and maybe some strategy sprinkled in.
Sure.
So what would you say are different challenges you face with a team of cross-functional disciplines comparatively to design teams?
Yeah, so initially, I would oftentimes pull the different groups together and have meetings and share information without really thinking about the needs of each of the different functions individually. And that did not work out so well because different functions have different questions, they go into different depth, they want to sort of meet amongst their peers. And so what I do differently is, if I am just leading a team of PMs, designers, engineers, whatever it is, I know that I can focus on sharing the information in the same way that I know that they want to take it in. But I know that if I'm leading cross-functionally, the first thing I want to do is I may want to share the information broadly, but then I need to meet with each of the functions separately, which is what I do today. So if I share a change in our strategy, I'm then going to sit down with my PMs, my delivery managers, my engineers, my designers, and share the information and give them each space to ask those questions. I found that a lot of times, some functions are more vocal than others, some personalities are more vocal than others, and it's easier for people to ask questions if you sort of carve out their spaces or their niches. And then I can tailor my message or my feedback to the group as I know they need to hear it.
No, that's great. And so let's kind of pivot a little bit here and just talk about how you've navigated your career and changes in your career across various companies. So what have you learned about advancing and maturing your career as you've progressed through different companies?
I have learned that there are some things that are similar, but most of them are different. And so for me, I think I've found success in just acknowledging that when I am starting in a new company or a new team within the company, I start as if I know nothing. And I just sort of embed myself across the different teams. I engage with individuals, not in any type of hierarchy, but I just sort of shadow, creepily watching what they do, but I enjoy it. And it helps me just build empathy for what they do day to day. So if a person is complaining about a process, I don't sort of just shoot away. I know, like, hey, that is a challenging process. It takes 6 hours, and I wish we could improve it, and hopefully we'll get to do that, But I've felt it with them, so I know what that problem is. And so, I think that has been helpful, sitting down, building empathy with the teams, understanding what their processes are, and then slowly working my way up to a point where I feel like I can start to give recommendations, give guidance then start to manage and lead the team. I also have built trust along that way. Oftentimes in the past when I've come in, I'd say like, hey, I'm your new leader. And I start to say things. People are like, I don't know you. And I don't know why you are telling me to do these things.
Right.
You don't understand what I do. And I find that there's more friction there. So it's like a slow build for my teams. And then for myself, I spend a lot of time just networking within the company. So I will meet with folks across legal, finance, policy, whatever. I'll meet with everyone. And my goal there, again, is to build relationships. The worst thing I found for myself is to meet a person for the first time during a moment of duress or stress. It is not a good time to ask a person for help or to tell them something is wrong. But if you do like know their dog's name, or like you can talk about something and then you're like, hey, listen, this is not working out, they are more inclined to help you and to support you, which is good.
Yeah, I really appreciate that in terms of just coming in and taking your time and moving slow. I think that's one mistake I've made in the past, is coming in and you have ideas and you're just excited to push forward, then you realize it's not really the right thing, and it's more about, and then another big piece of it is trust.
Yeah.
So how about strategies for growing trust within the team, which I think today is increasingly more difficult than in the past?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, right, is you put yourself in everyone else's shoes. And the biggest thing I always ask myself is, why should I trust this person, or why should I listen or engage with this person? And in order to do that for myself, I have to know that they understand who I am and what I'm doing. And they have to kind of speak to those like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think that creates a space of safety for me. They have to let me know that, hey, if I make a mistake, it's okay. They're gonna support me through it, and they're gonna like give me feedback, whatever it may be. And so really being mindful of how I am as a manager. I've definitely been like in my earlier times as a manager, like people could see whatever it was on my face.
Right.
And then they'd be scared to say like, hey, I messed up, or can I get some help? But in meetings, I model what I expect. So I'll be the first one to say, I don't know. Can you explain what this is? And the team's like, oh, okay, great. Like, they're telling me, like, there's space for me to answer the question, or I can do this as well. And so kind of modeling for the team, but also then creating space for them to also do the same thing is important. So I don't really react much in meetings. Like, I'll just let people say whatever it is. Like, okay, great. Like, let's talk about how we can improve that. Or what do you think we could have done differently? And it's like giving people space to share. And I think as a leader, it's great because you learn more about what's not working across your teams versus you finding out from wherever.
Yeah, and I think it's also good because it's not saying, hey, like I'm the smartest one here because I'm the manager of the team, but I also want to learn from you, and I think that's the best way to really get work done.
Yeah, and I mean, the day would be pretty boring if we knew everything.
Yeah.
You know?
Agree. How about strategy shifts? Which, again, I think is another relevant topic for today. And something happens and it causes it just, we've been working really hard going in one direction, and now it's time for a pivot to do something new. It's often difficult to give out that type of news, and also hard to get that type of feedback, especially when you've invested so much time into doing something. How have you gone about, do you have any examples of strategy shifts or times you've had to manage through change, and how have you gone about doing so?
Yeah, this one I feel like is more common now.
Yeah.
During this period, post-COVID, during COVID, I feel personally. In the beginning, I would just say it, rip the Band-Aid, and keep moving, and I wouldn't think about the impact that the shift would have on the team. So if a team has to throw away work, which is like a hard one, there was a lot of anger, like pent-up anger that would be stuffed in somewhere that would come out in different areas of ways, especially in all hands. But what I found is, you kind of have to take whatever it is and just start to break it apart for the team. So I may, again, pull my managers or a small group together and say, okay, like this is the direction that we're going to be going down. Can you all talk me through concerns? And that's the first layer I start to gather concerns from. And I will start to adjust my messaging, add things, take things away based on the feedback I'm receiving, craft the messaging from there. And then I will work with those leaders to communicate it out. So if it's like a shift that is significant, I won't put that on my leaders to say first. I'll say it first. And I'll take the brunt of whatever it is. And then my ask is that my managers or my leaders around me then echo everything that I say. But my hope is that they'll have a sense of what has already been asked, what has already been shared in terms of feedback, to then be prepared for their own conversations. After that happens, what I tend to do is just have smaller group sessions. And I just start to do like groups of 3 or 4, depending on the size of the team. And it takes a while, but I found it's worth it. If people don't understand, or if they're not bought into a shift, the shift won't matter because the people won't do the work in any meaningful way. And so you have to get them to be bought in. And so a lot of it can be time consuming, but it is worth the investment.
No, I love it. I love your approach to just kind of communicating with
Slow
your
and
team.
steady.
I have a lot more questions for you, but I know that there's
Oh, yeah.
audience questions that I think are coming in, so let's open it up here. Oh, it's over here. I'm always the one who's like making it. I can't see that screen, so I'm gonna look up here. How do you handle disagreements between product and design?
Oh,
That's a good one.
that's a good one. It depends. Sometimes I find disagreement is in like an approach, or the disagreement is in the people and how they communicate. And so my first approach is, what is the disagreement on? Are you both saying the same thing? You're just not happy that like one person's saying and the other person's not saying
Right.
it, or whatever it may be. But if it truly is an approach, it's subjective sometimes, like it depends. And I hate to use the word like depends, but it really does depend on the situation. A lot of times you kind of have to coach people through the conversation. Because if you come in and pick a side and you are leading both of those functions, one function will feel slighted. And so you want to coach through and help them get to a solution. So a lot of times I won't come in and say like, obviously this is the right answer. I will coach them through and help them try to communicate and understand what would be the best approach. Oftentimes it's a little bit of both that we can take forward. But I try not to come in and like pick a path unless there's like a blindly obvious one that we should be taking.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's also helping people craft that message, because you could say something the wrong way or the right way.
Exactly.
And if you say it the right way, you're going to get a positive response. If you say the same thing and not the right way, then all of a sudden it just leads to more conflict. So.
Yeah. But one thing I would say in that is that you have to, one thing I'm mindful of is how quickly decisions are made, because sometimes it is a very timely decision and there's not a lot of time to do like the coaching back and forth.
Right.
And so you have to kind of be very mindful of the balance there.
Sure. I'm going to go to another question here. It looks like we scrolled down. So how do you measure mood and morale with a team of 700 people? And how do you get the vibe, especially in a remote setting?
Yeah, so tools, honestly. Sometimes I do like a weekly poll with Slack and just have like a little bot that pops up in people's Slack bot, like a little Slack bot, and people just push like 1 through 5, like, how are you feeling? What are you working on? Like there's a couple of questions that goes out to the team on a weekly basis, so I can see whether the person feels connected to like a larger mission or project. I can see their overall morale. And then if there's like a question, like they'll ask like, why are we doing this, or whatever it may be. And they can choose for it to be anonymous, or they can put their name on it. Most people put their name on it. And so I can quickly just take a poll of the team and see like where I need to spend more time.
Yeah, so we have a donut channel where you randomly get
done in the past.
paired with somebody at the company who
Yeah.
you normally wouldn't meet. It's just kind of interesting because that's an entire company, and you could do that on a team
Yeah.
with 700 people. How do you define the boundaries or roles between product and research and design?
So I have never been one to carry hard boundaries. I think it's important for teams to build empathy for each function. And so I encourage people to pair like product and UX product, like whatever. I encourage all folks to pair just so you understand what a person is doing, how they're thinking about a problem so that it doesn't come to you as a surprise. Oftentimes, like I will have like a RACI where I'll say like this person is responsible, this person's accountable for a decision. And so there is clarity even though you are pairing. And so normally when I'm working with larger teams, there is a sort of like RACI that we have where we say, okay, for this type of project, if it's research, if it's the shipping of a product, if like, for the different phases or life cycle of product, I'll have a RACI where each person knows like they are the accountable party to moving this along to the next step.
Right. And just a quick time. It looks like we might be up on time. I don't know if we have time for one more question. Peter's been up there for a while and you disappeared. But what is your perspective on moving design jobs abroad? We'll wrap up after that one.
I mean, I think it depends on the company, honestly. I've worked with companies where we've had design in-house, and that's the way Shopify is currently. But then I've worked at companies where we've had design be like in Ukraine or in other places. And it really just depends on the need of the organization. We had designers in-house, but then we would need to scale for a project, and we would go out. Again, the biggest thing there, if you want to be successful, from my experience, is scaling the communication and making sure that they feel like they're part of the team, because they can be unhappy too, and the quality of their work can go down.
Right. Great. Well, it was amazing talking to you today. I know I learned a lot. Hopefully people here got something out of it.
Good.
All right.
All right.